Are the kayak companies doing it wrong? Let's talk about that.
Welcome to Angler's Brave. Here you'll find low-budget tips, tricks, reviews, do-it-yourself projects, and other shenanigans, all relating to kayaking, fishing, and sailing.
When I take out a tour, the first thing I do is I give them a safety briefing. And during that safety briefing, amongst other very important parts, such as PFDs and so on, I teach them 3 basic strokes. The 3 basic strokes I teach them as a normal stroke, and the second stroke I teach them is a power stroke, or what I call a power stroke. And the third one is the turn stroke, the long, slow stroke. Now, the long stroke that I'm talking about is you take the paddle, you kind of take it over to one side, and you take the front of the paddle and you put it all the way to the front of the boat, and you go all the way to the back of the boat. And you go all the way to the front of the boat, you go all the way to the back of the boat. And if you want on the other side, you go from the back of the boat all the way to the front of the boat. And what that does is it turns your kayak. Now, it's one of the easiest way to turn a kayak. Now, the second stroke, the power stroke, is kind of like the stroke that you use if you've ever been whitewater rafting, or if you've ever seen those guys in Hawaii with the canoes, those kind of kayaks with the outriggers and stuff like that, where they use paddles and they lean forward and they pull their body back with the paddle like this. Anybody who's been whitewater rafting knows what I'm talking about. If you look up some videos on whitewater rafting, you'll be able to see that. In my opinion, there are 2 main problems with kayak paddles. The first one is they drip on you. I don't care who you are, you've been dripped on if you've been kayaking. The second one is they break. I hate seeing somebody that pays $300 for a paddle only to break it because of what could possibly be a wrong or a bad design. There are 2 types of kayaks, a sit-in and a sit-on-top. Now, sit-in kayaks are what the average kayak paddle is designed for. You're in the water and you get a lot of thrust by using your torso side to side, that normal stroke that I talk about. The reason that kayak paddles drip on you is because when you go to paddle, your paddle goes at a higher angle. The higher you sit, the higher the angle. And the higher the angle, that drip ring goes over top of you and will drip down on you. Now, whenever you go into any kind of Vice column or forum or Facebook page or something like that, and you ask somebody, hey, I'm getting dripped on, what do I do? The number one answer is the wrong answer, in my opinion. The number one answer is get a longer paddle. What happens when you get a longer paddle is you create more torque further away from your boat. And when you create more torque further away from your boat, you turn the front of your boat side to side to side to side. While I was editing this video, I realized something. I didn't quite explain tracking to you guys very well. Tracking is how a kayak goes through the water. Now, what we want is a kayak that goes through the water very straight and then with as little effort as possible. When the bow of the kayak goes side to side, it's causing a few problems. The first thing is it's not going to go through wakes or anything like that very well. It's not going to go over a little bit of choppy water very well. The second thing is it's hard to get from A to B when your kayak keeps going side to side and it's throwing off your alignment to where you're going. The third thing is it's not going very fast. You have to give more effort to get it from A to B. When you paddle a fishing kayak that you're up out of the water in, you should be using what I call a power stroke. You should be leaning up, putting the paddle as close to the kayak as you can, and bringing it straight back. Not in a side-to-side motion, but up and back, like a sit-up. So you go up and back, and you go up and back. Now, once you get going, just using your arms is okay if you're on like flat water, you don't have a lot of resistance, that's fine. But the actual stroke of going in and up and back, keeping that paddle as close to the kayak as possible, stops a fishing kayak or a sit-in kayak that you sit above the water in. It stops that side to side from the front. Now, what kayak companies do is they redesign hulls. They put little V's in them, or they do these little notches, or some of them have the hydro. There's so many different hull designs. My new canoe, Frontier 12, for instance, has a very long paddle because you sit like 18 inches or better, 20 inches above the waterline. Now, because of that, you got that long paddle they give you. I don't remember how long it is. The thing's outrageously long. And when you paddle that front end of that new canoe goes ridiculously side to side. It kind of has to. When you're creating torque that far out from the boat, it's going to turn the boat. And the further you get out from the boat, the more torque you're going to turn the boat. So getting a longer paddle is creating more problems than just getting wet. So number one, how do we stop getting wet? Well, I think some kind of a cone at the end where the water drips into the cone and then falls out of the cone is probably your best bet. I think the blades are breaking because when we do power strokes and we get going really hard, or we have to fight against current and those kind of things, I think the blades are breaking because honestly, you're higher up and you're creating more torque. I'd like to see companies contribute more R&D into the design of the actual blade for a better stroke technique.